This time we are taking you to Brazil, South America, the land of the Amazon, carnival, favelas, football, and a kind of heat that wraps around your body like a second skin. A country so big it stretches across 3 time zones. A country so beautiful it breaks your heart. And a country so unequal that a child born on one side of a street can grow up to become a billionaire while a child born on the other side never learns to read. Imagine this. It is 1963. You are 12 years old. You live in a small city called Franca in the interior of Sao Paulo state, about 400 kilometers from the big city. Deep in the countryside where coffee plantations stretch to the horizon and the pace of life is slow and sticky. Your aunt and uncle own a tiny gift shop on the main street. It used to be called a cristaleira, a little store that sold crystalware, ceramic plates, and household trinkets that women bought as wedding gifts and birthday presents. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make the newspapers, just a modest shop on a modest street in a modest town where everybody knew everybody, and the church bells told you the time. But your Aunt Luiza Trajano Donato, is not a modest woman. She has an idea. She runs a contest on the local radio station and asks the entire town to vote on a new name for the store. The people choose Magazine Luiza, named after her. And just like that, a brand is born from the mouths of ordinary people in a small Brazilian town. Now here is the part that matters. Your school holidays have just started and every other kid in Franca is outside playing football in the dust, swimming in the river, doing nothing. But not you. You walk into your aunt's shop and you say, I want to work. You are 12 years old. Nobody asked you to come. Nobody told you to help. You just showed up. You stood behind the counter and you started selling. And you liked it so much that you came back the next holiday, and the next, and the next. While other girls your age were dreaming about boys and beaches and summer romances, you were learning the most valuable education on earth. How to look a customer in the eye, understand what they needed before they even said it out loud, and close a sale with a smile that made them feel like family. Her name is Luiza Helena Trajano, and she had 86,400 seconds every day to turn a gift shop in the Brazilian countryside into one of the largest retail empires in South American history. This is 86,400 Stories, episode 22, the Queen of Brazilian Retail. Luiza. She did not stop at holiday shifts. By the time she was 18, she was working at Magazine Luiza full-time. Not in the easy jobs, not sitting behind a desk filing paperwork. She worked the floor. She worked collections, knocking on doors and asking people to pay their overdue bills. She worked sales. She worked management. She worked accounting. She went through every single department in the company, from the stockroom to the cash register, because she wanted to understand the business the way a surgeon understands a body. Every organ, every vein, every heartbeat. In 1972, she graduated in law from the Faculdade de Direito de Franca. Not because she wanted to be a lawyer, because she wanted to understand the rules that govern the world she was building inside. Contracts, rights, power structures, the invisible architecture behind every deal. For 20 years she worked inside that company. 20 years of learning, watching and storing every lesson in a place inside her that most people never use. That was her silent grind. Not filled with rejection, filled with patience. Every time a male supplier talked over her, every time a banker looked past her at the men in the room, every time someone assumed her uncle was the real boss and she was just the girl behind the counter, she stored all of it and she waited. Then in 1991, her Aunt Luiza, the woman who had founded the store, the woman whose name was on the building, wrote her a note. A simple handwritten note that said, I'm 62 years old. I'm getting old. I think it is time for you to take over the magazine. Now here is where the trap enters the story. When Luiza Helena took over, Magazine Luiza had 37 stores, all of them in the interior of Sao Paulo state. A small regional chain selling furniture and appliances to working class Brazilians in small towns. The kind of company that the big city executives in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro had never even heard of. She was a woman in Brazil in the early 1990s, taking over a retail company in a country where machismo was not just a culture. It was the operating system that ran everything. Men ran the boardrooms, men ran the banks, men ran the supply chains. Men shook hands with other men and made deals over steak and whiskey while their wives waited in the car. And here was a woman from a tiny town in the interior. Not Sao Paulo, not Rio de Janeiro, not anywhere the financial world took seriously, saying, "I'm in charge now, and I'm not asking for your permission." The first thing Luiza Helena did was something no Brazilian retail executive had ever attempted. It was 1992. The internet barely existed. Mark Zuckerberg was 8 years old. Jeff Bezos was still working at a hedge fund. And Luiza Helena Trajano created virtual stores. She put computers inside small physical stores in tiny Brazilian towns too small for a full department store, and let customers browse and order products on screen with the help of a salesperson. The product would then be shipped to the store for pickup. It was e-commerce before e-commerce had a name. It was click and collect before Amazon existed. Nobody understood it. Competitors laughed. Technology writers in Sao Paulo scratched their heads. But the customers in those small towns, they loved it. For the first time in their lives, they could buy a refrigerator or a washing machine without driving 4 hours to a big city. That was the ultimate vision. While every other Brazilian retailer was fighting over the same expensive real estate in Sao Paulo and Rio, Luiza went where nobody was looking. The interior. Small cities. Towns with 10,000 people. Communities that the big retail chains had completely ignored because they thought there was no money there. Luiza knew something the big chains did not. Poor people buy things too. They just need someone to trust, someone to offer fair credit, and someone to treat them with dignity. She gave them all three. She introduced installment plans that let families pay for a refrigerator over 12 months. She trained her staff to treat every customer like a guest in their home, not a transaction. She made Monday mornings into company rituals where every employee across every store sang the national anthem together and shared news and energy. In 1999, she launched the first full online store, years ahead of most Brazilian companies. By the early 2000s, Magazine Luiza was expanding across state lines like wildfire. In 2007, the company went public on the Bovespa, the Brazilian stock exchange, and the share price began a climb that would turn Luiza Helena into a billionaire. From 37 stores to over 1,400, from one small town in the countryside to 23 Brazilian states, from a gift shop named after her aunt to a publicly traded empire worth billions of reais. The girl who showed up at 12 years old during her school holidays to work behind a counter for free had built the Amazon of Brazil before Amazon even got there. But here is what separates Luiza Helena Trajano from every other retail CEO on the planet. She did not just build a company, she built a movement. In 2012, she founded Grupo Mulheres do Brasil, Women of Brazil, a network that grew to over 100,000 members. Lawyers, teachers, doctors, businesswomen, factory workers, single mothers, all united around one idea: that women deserve an equal seat at every table in the country. Not as a favor, as a right. Then in 2017, something happened that shook her to her core. One of her store managers, a woman named Denise, 37 years old, 13 years of service at Magazine Luiza, was murdered by her own husband. Domestic violence, the kind of story that makes the news for one day and then disappears while another woman dies the next week. Luiza did not let it disappear. She created a domestic violence hotline inside the company for all employees, men and women. Magazine Luiza provided counseling, legal aid, and relocation support for anyone trapped in an abusive relationship. She then required every outsourced company that supplied workers to Magazine Luiza to hire at least 2% of abused women, giving them financial independence and a way out. That is what the ultimate boss move looks like. The enemy was not a competitor. Goliath was the culture itself, a system that turned its back on women in danger. And Luiza walked straight into that fight with her fists up and her checkbook open. In 2020, she launched another bomb. Magazine Luiza announced that its new trainee program would be open only to black candidates. In a country where structural racism runs so deep that there was only one black female leader of a major Brazilian company, Luiza said, "Enough waiting. Enough talking about diversity without doing anything about it." The backlash was enormous. Politicians attacked her. A government deputy filed a complaint with the public prosecutor's office. Social media erupted. Luiza did not flinch. She did not issue an apology. She stood at the podium and said, "We know people will disagree, but we will keep going. We will fight and we will not give up easily." She told the cameras that their previous diversity programs had failed because they were not bold enough, and she would rather break the taboo than keep pretending. In 2021, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Former President Lula wrote the entry, calling her Odyssey unlike any billionaire he had ever seen. Today, Luiza Helena Trajano sits at the center of a retail empire that spans over 1,400 physical stores across 23 Brazilian states. Magazine Luiza, known by millions simply as Magalu, serves over 37 million customers, employs more than 43,000 people, and generates over 65 billion reais in annual sales. Her son Frederico now runs the company as CEO, carrying the family torch into the next generation. Forbes named her the richest woman in Brazil. Her peak net worth reached nearly $5 billion. She was named Person of the Year by the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce. The President of Brazil personally asked her to run a government ministry. She said no, because she believed she could do more from outside the system than inside it. That is true power. She did not ask for permission to lead. She did not wait for someone to open the door and invite her in. She showed up at 12, learned the business from the stockroom to the boardroom, waited 20 patient years, and then took the wheel and drove it from a small town in the Brazilian interior to the Bovespa Stock Exchange, to the cover of Time magazine, to the conscience of an entire nation. So now I have to ask you the question, what is your excuse? Luiza Helena Trajano grew up in a small town that most Brazilians could not find on a map. She worked behind a counter at 12. She was overlooked because she was a woman in a country that treated business like a men's club. She took over a chain of 37 stores in the countryside while the real power sat in the big cities 400 kilometers away. And she turned it into an empire that outpaced every single competitor. Invented virtual retail before the internet even existed, and then used that empire as a weapon to fight domestic violence, structural racism, and gender inequality from the inside out. She did all of it inside the same 86,400 seconds you and I wake up with every morning. The same hours, the same minutes, the same chance to choose what kind of story you write with the time you are given. Take the pain of the trap and use it as fuel. Build your empire in the places nobody else is looking. Fight for the ultimate flex, the version of your life that doesn't wait for an invitation, it creates one. The pen is in your hands, and possibility has no postcode. See you in the next account. This has been 86,400 Stories, hosted by Mayo. Every second there is a story.